For years, Amelia Warner had been the quiet constant in Jamie Dornan's chaotic world, the calm presence behind the man the world called Christian Grey. To the outside eye, theirs was a love story untouched by scandal. A beautiful wife, a devoted husband, 3 daughters, and a life far from Hollywood's noise. But the truth, as Amelia would later admit, was far from the glossy photographs and red carpet smiles. "Everyone thought we had the perfect life," she said softly in her first real interview in years. "But living with Jamie was the hardest battle I've ever fought." Her voice didn't carry anger, only exhaustion, and a quiet ache that came from years of silence. "He was never unkind," she continued. "But when someone is loved by the world, you start to wonder if there's any love left for you." Amelia and Jamie met before the storm, before 50 Shades of Grey changed everything. Back then, he was simply Jamie, the musician turned actor with a crooked smile and a quiet charm. They fell in love over shared jokes, long drives, and a mutual love of normalcy. "He didn't want fame," she recalled. "He wanted peace. We both did." But peace was the first thing fame took away. When 50 Shades became a phenomenon, their private world disappeared overnight. Fans followed their every move, headlines dissected every glance, and interviewers asked questions Amelia couldn't escape, even when she wasn't in the room. "It was strange," she said. "People were talking about my husband like he was a character in their fantasy. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't compete with that version of him, the one they created." She began to notice subtle shifts, not in Jamie's love, but in his presence. "He'd come home and still be somewhere else," she confessed. "He'd sit at dinner and talk about the day, but his eyes were far away. I used to joke that he left a part of himself on every set. But after a while, it stopped being a joke." The distance grew quietly, like fog settling over everything familiar. There were no fights, no cruel words, just the slow erosion of closeness. "I kept telling myself it was temporary," Amelia said, "that once the filming ended, we'd find our way back to the people we used to be. But fame doesn't end when the cameras stop. It follows you home." For years, she smiled for the cameras, walked the red carpets, and played her part as the supportive wife. But inside, she was fighting a war she couldn't name, against loneliness, against invisibility, against the quiet guilt of feeling unloved by someone who loved her deeply. "He tried," she said. "Jamie always tried, but you can't give what you don't have. And fame took so much from him that there wasn't much left to give." There were moments when she wanted to walk away, when the silence between them felt louder than any argument could. "Sometimes I'd watch him sleeping and wonder if he even knew how much I missed him," she admitted. "He was right there, but he wasn't mine anymore, not in the way he used to be." Yet, through it all, she stayed. Not because she was weak, but because she still believed in the man beneath the fame. "I stayed because I knew who he was before the world claimed him," she said. "And part of me hoped that one day, he'd find his way back." But as the years went by, Amelia began to realize that love alone wasn't enough to save what fame had taken. "I loved him deeply," she said, "but I also lost myself trying to hold on to the version of us that no longer existed." Her friends noticed the change. She withdrew from public life, choosing quiet mornings with her daughters over Hollywood events. "I started writing music again," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. "It was the only place I could still be honest." Her songs, though never publicly released, were said to be filled with melancholy, lyrics about distance, devotion, and the ache of being close to someone you can't quite reach. When the interviewer asked her what the hardest part of it all had been, Amelia didn't hesitate. She looked down, fingers intertwined, and said, "The hardest part wasn't losing Jamie to fame. It was realizing that I had been disappearing too, piece by piece, year after year." She paused for a moment, her voice steady but fragile. "Everyone saw him," she whispered. "No one saw me." The interviewer stayed silent, letting her words settle. There was no bitterness in them, just truth, stripped bare. As the cameras cut, Amelia leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. "I don't regret loving him," she said finally. But living with him, that was a battle I didn't know how to win. And though she didn't say it aloud, the look in her eyes revealed what her words didn't, that sometimes, love doesn't end with a breakup or a betrayal. Sometimes, it ends quietly, in the spaces where two people stop being seen. He was never my enemy, she said softly as she stood to leave. He was just the man I couldn't reach anymore. What came next, her reflection on what the hardest battle truly meant, would reveal the heartbreak and strength that her silence had hidden for years. When the interview aired, the world was stunned into silence. For years, Amelia Warner had been seen as the woman who had it all: beauty, grace, and the kind of quiet strength that made her husband's fame seem effortless. But now, her truth was out there, raw and unfiltered. Living with Jamie Dornan had been her hardest battle. The headlines came fast. Amelia speaks. The truth behind the marriage. Warner's emotional confession breaks hearts worldwide. Yet what struck people most wasn't scandal or accusation. It was the tenderness in her words. The way she spoke of pain without anger, of loss without blame. In the days that followed, Amelia chose not to elaborate. She didn't need to. The interview said everything. But privately, friends revealed that the moment she spoke those words, something in her shifted. It was like she finally exhaled after holding her breath for 10 years, one close friend shared. She wasn't attacking Jamie, she was finally freeing herself. Behind closed doors, Jamie saw the interview too. He was alone in a hotel room, thousands of miles away, when he watched it for the first time. Those who knew him said he didn't move for nearly an hour after it ended. Just sat there, head in his hands. Later, he told a friend, "I knew she'd been hurting. I just didn't realize how much." The public expected him to issue a statement, maybe defend himself, maybe apologize. But he didn't. When a journalist cornered him at an event, Jamie simply said, "She has every right to speak her truth." His voice was steady, but his eyes, tired, heavy, said everything else. Meanwhile, Amelia stayed quiet again, retreating to the countryside with her daughters. "She's not running," her sister explained. "She's just trying to live in peace for once." In that peace, Amelia began to heal. She spent her mornings writing music and her evenings cooking dinner with her girls. A life without pretense, without the weight of someone else's shadow. In a follow-up interview months later, she spoke again, this time with a sense of calm that only comes after pain has finally found its name. "People think my battle was with Jamie," she said softly. "But really, it was with myself. With the version of me that thought love meant disappearing so someone else could shine." She paused, then smiled faintly. "It took me a long time to understand that you can love someone deeply and still lose yourself in the process. The battle wasn't surviving him, it was remembering me." Those words struck a chord far beyond Hollywood. Women around the world began quoting her online, calling her the voice of every woman who's ever loved too quietly. Yet Amelia didn't want to be anyone's symbol. "I don't want to be a headline or a lesson," she told the interviewer. "I just want to be happy, truly happy, not pretend happy." When asked about Jamie, she didn't hesitate. "I'll always care for him," she said. "He's the father of my children, and he's a good man. But sometimes, good people still hurt each other, not because they mean to, but because they're lost in their own storms." Her words weren't bitter, they were full of grace. That's what made them hurt even more. Jamie, for his part, later admitted in an interview of his own, "Amelia saw parts of me that fame made me forget. I owe her more than I can say." It was the closest thing to an apology he could give, not in public spectacle, but in quiet recognition. In time, Amelia's story stopped being treated as gossip and started being seen for what it was, a portrait of love, sacrifice, and the strength it takes to walk away from the version of life everyone else thought was perfect. "The truth is," she said in one of her final remarks, "I didn't stop loving him. I just stopped fighting for a life that was slowly breaking me." Her eyes glistened when she said it, but her voice didn't shake. She had already cried all her tears long ago. The interviewer asked her what she would tell her younger self. the woman who once believed love could fix anything. Amelia smiled. I'd tell her that love isn't supposed to feel like a battle, she said. And if it does, then it's time to lay down your armor. She leaned back, her expression peaceful, almost radiant. Living with Jamie was my hardest battle, she said one last time, but it also taught me who I am when the fighting stops. And in that single sentence, Amelia Warner, the woman who had lived in someone else's shadow for so long, finally stepped into her own light. I didn't lose, she whispered. I just chose peace. The camera faded out as her words lingered in the air, not as a confession, not as a farewell, but as a quiet victory. Because sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is stop surviving and start living.